Hello YouTube and hello Ninth Age community. This is Charles with Evershade Gaming, and I've got another Ninth Age battle report. This time against the new Dread Elf Alpha Lab. Very excited. Got to cover some of them. Got to talk about the Raiders and Destroyers, and very excited to play them. Playing a game with Donis out deployment and King of the Hill as our secondary. My opponent, Dread Elf Army list, contains a Dread Prince, who's the general. He's on a Raptor with the paired weapons, lacerating touch upgrade, Assault Infusion, Ring of the Obsidian Throne, Morthir's Mirror, and a shield, clocking in at 493. And then he's got a Warlock Outcast using Cosmology and using the Talisman of the Void. He's got a Temple Legate BSB with the Divination upgrade, which is the... I can't think what the other kind of oracle that one's called. Blades of Drog, Book of Arcane Mastery. He's got a single Silent Assassin using the Blades of Drog. And then he's got two things of 15 Dread Legionnaires with Champion and Musician. He's got 20 Temple Militants with the Rending Banner and full command. And he's got 10 Raiding Party with the Corsairs upgrade. He's got 10 Dread Knights using great weapons, full command, and they have the Eye of the Gorgon standard, which is a standard that has the Petrifying Stare special rule, which does 2 AP10 hits that wound depending on your height. And then it's also got the reroll your discipline checks ability too, which is pretty powerful. So, and then he's got 5 Shadow Riders, 2 Repeater Batteries, 2 Raptor Chariots, and 9 Black Cloaks. So I played Ogre Cons, and I've got a Con BSB who's got the Horde Master upgrade, which it says he's got light armor, but now he has plate armor because Horde Master. And he's got an Ogre Crossbow, he's got the Crown of the Wizard King, and the Mammoth High Cloak. Then I have a Shaman General who's got Gut Roar, Iron Fist, light armor, Shamanism, Wizard Master, not Wizard Master, Wizard Master, Ritual Bloodletter on his Iron Fist, Talisman of the Void, and he's got the Restor's Belt, and he's also got a Magical Heirloom. It's definitely expensive, $680. 8 Tribesmen, full command with Iron Fists and the Skull of Quinget. 8 Tribesmen, full command, Iron Fists, and the Rending Standard. 1 Saber-Toothed Tiger, 5 Scrappling Trappers, 4 Tusker Cavalry with the Banner of Ginget with full command and paired weapons, 2 Yetis with a champion, two drops of 2 Yetis, both with champions, 4 Bombardiers with a musician, a Rock with the rider having a lance instead of a crossbow, and a Slave Giant with gray weapon. That's my 4,500 points Ogre Cons list. So, this is actually just, this is my BSB. I just sort of put them together quite recently, mostly out of just some bits. I had a friend who gave me that really nice banner, and I wanted to use it, so I just sort of kind of bashed him together with a bunch of stuff. Astute OgreCon players will notice the 8th edition Games Workshop Morn Fang Cavalry kit, and also I think some bits from the Rock kit. He, with the Crown of the Wizard Master, picked up Hand of Heaven, which is a great magic missile, especially because I'm using Shamanism, and I did not take any magic missiles. I thought about taking Swarm of Insects, but all of his shooting can move, and he only has, he's got 3 shooting units. They're all really good. I guess I'm not even counting the Corsairs and the shooting things. But yeah, I just decided to go with Break the Spirit, Totemic Summon, Savage Fury, and Awaken the Beast. And then, of course, I have Children Umi. So with King of the Hill, I was able to pick my deployment side. And I chose this hill. And since it was Dawn Assault and my opponent had a building in his right corner, I decided I would not deploy to the... I would deploy in this corner of the board, actually, to the left of my hill, so that my opponent, backwards. Yes. Sorry. Yes. You'll see in a second, actually. I'm just going to stop talking about that. But King of the Hill for objectives, I put my objective marker on the hill. My opponent put his in that water terrain feature. And here's my deployment. So surprisingly, I don't know about surprisingly, my opponent told me what he wanted to do, and I still sort of went for it anyway. My opponent, I think, deployed a single unit. Oh, he deployed those Dread Legionnaires next to that building in that corner. So the corner that I can't deploy in is to the right with the runes. So my opponent can't deploy in that left corner with that forest, or you can deploy in about half of that forest. So I wanted to stick that building in my opponent's deployment zone. My opponent said, "Sure, go ahead and go ahead and." I mean, he dropped one thing, and then he said, "If you want it, go ahead," which was fair. Not that I necessarily needed turn one with this army, as I don't have a ton of shooting, but I do like the tempo that you can set with turn one, so I decided to go for it, and I dropped everything. So starting on the left, 2 Yetis, 4 Bombardiers with a Musician, 4 Tusker Cav, Rock, Saber-Tooth Tiger, 8 Tribesmen with my BSB, and then 8 more Tribesmen with my Shaman, Giant, 2 more Yetis, and I still have to deploy my Scrappling Trappers. Another picture of what my deployment looks like from the other side of the board, and my opponent's deployment. Three, two, one. So, in all fairness, this is actually a picture of Ogre Khan's turn one, but this also gives you a good pic of my opponent's deployment since I did get the chance to go first. So, as you can see, my opponent had. Yeah, so he's got his 2 Dread Legionnaires on the left there. He's got his 2 Bolt Throwers behind, on the back side of the board. He's got his Raptor Prince right there in the middle. He's got his 2 Raptor Chariots in the middle. He's got his 5 Fast Cab. They vanguarded forward to be right there. He's got his Corsairs in sort of a skinny 2-stick, 2-wide stick. And then he's got his 20 Militants with his BSB in it. He scouted his 9 Black Cloaks to be in front of my Giant because he wanted to use them to get rid of that. And then he dropped his Dread Knights on my right flank, his left flank, the east flank. And yeah, so I ended up vanguarding my Yetis forward more aggressively on the east than on the west, as I didn't really think the Yetis had a ton they could do on the west. And on the east, I really just was focused on making sure that those Raptor Knights didn't have a lot to charge. So I ended up, I trapped the runes because that's pretty much all I could trap. And I vanguarded forward with the Scrappling Travelers just to get in the face of those Dread Knights. So, and as you can see, I moved up forward my turn 1, and I got Magic Card 3. I get a Totanic Summon off because I cast on the big version, and it was so that I would be able to Breath Weapon the the Black Cloaks. And I Breath Weapon them, and I get 1, which was really disappointing. I think I rolled like a 3 on my Breath Weapon, which was pretty sad. And then I start shooting. My Ogre Crossbow kills 3 guys over here for my BSB, so that was pretty cool. And then I shoot with the Bombardiers, and they end up putting 2 wounds on the Dread Prince. They take 1 in return for the Morathir's Mirror, but that's a very good trade, so I was pretty pleased with that. And then we're going into Dread Elf's turn 1. So he charges a Totanic Summon, which at this point makes me wish I didn't really put my Scrapplings there, since they're chaffed and then they can just go into the Trappers, but yeah, you don't know if you're going to get a spell off or not. And then he chaffs my Tribesman block with my Shaman in it with his Fast Cav, so you're sort of trading chaff turn 1, which is not too bad. He moves back with his chariots, and he moves back with his dread prince. His elves on the west side of the board just sort of kind of shift over a little bit. One moves up a little bit. They're really just maintaining that 8-inch distance with each other with the academy training rule to sort of have a bit of a pro- projected threat range, which is working. It's I don't necessarily think those 15 legionnaires can beat something like my Tusker Cab, but they could definitely beat probably the Bombardiers. They could definitely beat the Yetis. Yeah, so I have to definitely be aware of them. My opponent also gets Flux Card 3 turn 1. He puts Scrying up on the Black Cloaks, which was tough, but my giant does have a charge into them, and if he gets in there, honestly, I mean his impact hits and his stomps are going to do more work anyway than his actual attacks, or just as much work anyway. So I let that go. He tries to get Stars Align off, and I'm able to stop that. Or actually, I think he failed that. And then he tried to get Touch of the Heart off, and I know I stopped that too to keep that Dread Prince on 2 wounds. So one of his repeater batteries shoots and does 2 wounds to my Tusker Cav. And then the Black Cloaks shoot, and they do only 1 wound to my Giant. Just not a great shooting phase for my opponent. So that was very fortunate. The Raptor Knights have no problem killing the tank summon, and they overrun right into the Scraplings. And then we go into Ogre Khan's turn 2. So I charge my Giant into the Black Cloaks. You can see he takes 2 more wounds from their stand and shoot. And then I charge my Shaman and his Tribesmen into the 5... man, I can't even think what they're called. Yeah, Raiders, Black Raiders, Dark Raiders. And yeah, I think that's all the combats we have for this turn. I moved my Yetis on the east over to chaff the the Raptor Knights, and then yeah, just sort of continue to push forward. I'm trying to get close enough to where maybe some things have a charge, but not everything has a charge, and to where I can start threatening. Yeah, yeah, because I want to try to get a combat turn 3 with some things, but at the same time I'm trying not to be too close to where I can just sort of get charged by 2 or 3 things, because then I think I'm just gonna lose those combats. So, in my magic phase is total dud turn 2. Very disappointing. I think I pulled Flux card 2, and I just didn't have a lot of dice and couldn't really get a lot off. I go into this combat, I get 3 impact hits, so I do 2 wounds. He attacks, and thankfully he only does 2 more wounds. This was just, I feel like another not so great roll for my opponent, because I honestly would not have been all that surprised if with all his attacks he was hitting on 2s, wounding on 5s, and he really could have poked me to death. I might have made 1/6 of armor save actually, since they're only strength 3 or AP 0 in combat. So I get to go, and I can't hit with any of my attacks, but I get a 6 on my stop, kill all but 1, and he flees, and he's now on a minimized, or on a half his leadership, and I believe he was outside the BSB range. So, and my giant just reforms. These guys kill the Scrappling Trappers, and it's this point I realized I honestly did not leave enough space over here, or I did not chaff tight enoughly, because now he can go wherever he wants, which was not great on my part. So considering I knew that, I did that combat before this combat, no problem killing those Dark Riders. Reformed to be I reformed to look at the knights, and and I have the Temple Militants in my front. I think I have the Chariot in my flank, but I'm not too worried about that. A Chariot's not going to necessarily break a big block like that. But yeah, unfortunately, that's where we're looking at. It's a bit of a longer charge, and the good thing is I haven't taken a wound on the tribesman block. So if he wants to charge, I want to say he needs maybe a 10 on the dice, so a little bit farther. And considering it was a little bit farther, my opponent decides just to clear the Yetis since they're right there for him. And he does charge with one of his chariots into my Rock, which was okay. And I forgot to mention this actually. I did get one spell off. I did get a big totemic summon off. So actually, I can't complain because I chaffed one of the chariots with the totemic summon. I want to say I tried to breath weapon one of the repeater batteries, and I didn't do any damage. Another low breath weapon. So my opponent goes into Flux card 2. He gets Truth of Time off on my Tribesman block, which I was not happy about, but I mean, he was casting with that Oracle, and he was able to toss 2 dice at it, and I want to say he got like an 8 or a 9 on the dice, which then goes to me needing like a 12 to dispel it, and it just wasn't worth it, unfortunately. So I decide just to soak that up. And then he's able to get scrying off, which was tough. And I stopped Perception of Strength on the Chariot because I did not want the Chariot just to blow through the Rock with all that Strength 6. The repeater battery starts shooting. This turn I lose one of my Tuskers, and I have a wound on another one. This I thought was very fortunate. Another repeater battery shoots at the Giant. Only does 1 wound. So that was, I thought, very fortunate because it would not have been all that crazy for him just to have pulled the Giant off. The Raptor Knights reform like this after just demolishing the Yetis. The Chariot demolishes the Totemic Summon. And they're going into the combat with the Rock. Impact hits to 3 wounds. And at that point, I was kind of freaking out, honestly. I'm thinking like, oh man, he's about to just kill this Rock, and like he's gonna tie up my BSB's block, and like, then he's gonna be able to like really push forward, and yeah, that's gonna be really tough. And thankfully, he whiffs on the rest of his attacks. I think he hit 4 times, which I don't think is that unreasonable, hitting on 2-up. But he only wounded once, so he rolled really poorly. He didn't do a single wound with his Raptors, which was fortunate because those are lethal strike and that would have just gone right through. So that was fortunate. So my Rock took 4 wounds, still alive. I don't think it dishes anything back out because he's got scrying, and I think I did 1 wound and he armor saved it on a 6-up because I still got a 3-up armor save. So yeah, that was brutal, but I did stick because my BSB is right there. And he decides to move them so that he can chaff. He decides to reform. He gets to do that first, and so he can chaff my Tuskers. So he chaffs my Tuskers. So the Tuskers decide, let's just help out the Rock, get rid of this Chariot. And one of the things that didn't happen is he never got rid of my Saber-tooth Tiger, which honestly I was probably not playing that well with it. I should have just held it back for another turn. And instead I sort of had it in the middle, which I think my opponent probably maybe rightly just ignored because it really wasn't doing all that much anyway. And he didn't want to get into combat with, I think, just the militants. So that was fortunate. So now it is pretty much fully chaffing the Temple militants and the character. I moved up my Bombardiers on the west to be within 12 inches with the whole unit. On that 15 block Spearman, I'm definitely whittling them down. They are just a big unit filler, so he's not really removing models, but he's counting how many he's been taken. And just holding back with my Yetis on the west, which in hindsight, I'm glad they were there to sort of zone to help protect the objective. I do sort of wish that I had put them in the middle to also help out there. That could have definitely changed the direction of the game. And then since my Giant had a single wound and there really wasn't anything he could charge and do anything meaningful against, I mean, I could have attempted a longer charge, I want to say, with the BSB's block into the Temple Militants, and the Giant could have also gotten there. But I just really wasn't that confident that the Tribesman block would make it. And not also, and then if the Giant goes in by himself, he's just toast. So what I decided to do is to use the Giant's Chaff, actually, which I don't think is the best move, but I'm thinking if I can, get close enough with the tribesmen, the one with my shaman has the rending banner, so they're, actually pretty good against these great weapon dread knights who will only have a 4 armor save against them in combat. I'm thinking with all that I can, and maybe a little shamanism magic to help too. I think the tribesmen will be able to beat those dread knights if they get to charge. So, this is the turn I get Flux card 2, actually. Sorry. And save a Veil token. And yeah, again, the Magic Fizz is just a total dud, actually. So, yeah, I don't know if I got anything off, unfortunately, that I can remember. Shoot over here. I think he's got only 8 of these guys left, so they're almost half strength, which is great. At this point, I don't know if they really can beat much, actually. They're a little too small now, which is good. The Tuskers have no problem with their impact hits, just blowing up the Raptor Chariot, so that was great. And then we're going into, this would be Dread Elves turn 3 at this point. So, to start off, my opponent charges with his Raptor Chariot and my Tuskers. And I really thought about this. I wanted to stick because I didn't like fleeing with them. Because I just felt like if they flee, they kind of pulls them out of the game. Obviously, that lets them redirect on the Rock. I think a Chariot goes in the Rock. I think it definitely kills it this turn. So I was definitely struggling with this. Not feeling really great about it. I decided to flee because I felt like if a Chariot goes into their front with all its impact hits and all its attacks, it's really going to do enough damage, I think, to win combat. It might take a couple wounds in turn, but I don't think the Tuskers kill it. Honestly, I think there'd only be one Tusker guy left, and I don't think he would kill it on his own. And which means then that I'm just going to lose that unit of Tuskers anyway. So I decided to flee with them. The Rock has to hold, and my opponent fails his charge. He only needed a 5, I want to say. So I got extremely fortunate right there. I can't even say how fortunate that was. So this is the rest of my opponent's movement. So he pushes up pretty aggressively with his Dread Legionnaires now, as he wants to start working for the objective on the west side of the board. He chaffs my BSB Khan's block with his Dread Prince, and I want to say he has healed a wound off him at this point, unfortunately, or he might do so this turn. And then the Dread Knights do go into the Giant to mop him up, and the Militants just back up. The Corsairs have sort of gone from 2x5 to 5x2, and they've pulled out their, 6x2. They've pulled out their throwing weapons, and they're going to try and kill that saber-toothed tiger. My opponent gets Flux card 4. His perception of strength off on these tribesmen, and I wanted to stop that, but again, the Warlock Outcast, when it casts magic, it's tough. If it gets the right roll, and honestly, there was a couple times where my opponent would barely get his spell off. He would only get it off by 1, or actually meeting the casting value. But even meeting the casting value of a 9 is really tough, because then it's 11, and if you only have 5 dice, to me, in my mind, I have to throw at least 4 if I want to make sure I know I'm going to dispel it. And at that point, if I only have 1 dice left, that's not going to do anything. So I decided to take it because I'm thinking in my head, I also have a strength buff, so I can just reverse it in my turn. I was thinking strength 4 would probably be enough to beat up those Dread Knights. And yeah, this is where he removes or he heals a wound off his Dread Prince. And the Corsairs, use their throwing weapons and kill the saber-tooth tiger, which is not great. And the repeater battery opens up and kills the rock, which is also not that great. And then at the start of my turn 4, my opponent decides to bring up his assassin, mostly because I did have the Yetis close by, and I possibly thinking about charging, but definitely, because only 8 models in that unit, but definitely not with the assassin. He would probably kill a Yeti before it gets to go. So, turn 4 charges. Decide to charge the Dread Prince in the face with my Bruiser block, or not Bruiser, BSB Con block with Tribesman, and the other Tribesman block with the Shaman going to the Raptor Knights. Thankfully, my Tusker Cav did rally. I lost a Bombardier the previous turn, and they ran and then they rallied, so that was very fortunate. So they unfortunately couldn't shoot this turn, but they are facing that smaller block of Dread Legionnaires. And the combat goes over here. It goes surprisingly well, despite the lack of magical support. I feel like I had so many magic phases where I just was not getting spells off. I want to say I think I started off by trying to cast Break the Spirit with 3 dice on, only needing the 8-up version on his Temple Militants, and I failed that. And then I just kept failing things. So I got the -1 to wound spell off on my Tribesman block to help my Con BSB. And that was it. But thankfully, I was able to go in here and I started attacking, and it's honestly not doing all that well. And then my bank rank pulls up its 12 attacks. It goes, and they end up doing they hit and just wound really well. And I'm only strength 3, AP 1 with the Rending Banner. So yeah, it was definitely a tougher fight, but we pulled it out. We beat them by, I think, 4, and then they failed their break test, and we pursued them down. So yeah, that was definitely a tough fight, but a lot of points to win right there. And then going into this was such a tough slog here. So we go into this combat, and my Con-ish is a duel, because we get into a duel between my Con and his Dread Prince. And I think I do a wound with my impact hits, which was a good start. I decided to use a gray weapon because I'm thinking, he's wounding me off. I think just a flat 5 because I had -1 to wound up and he had the +1 to wound. So I'm thinking I should survive his attacks. I had a 6-up armor save against all his attacks with a gray weapon. He got a whiffs against me, actually. Just didn't roll all that well. I mean, he hit well, but he just couldn't really roll the 5s to wound. And then his Raptor didn't do any damage. And then I'm like, great. So I go with my 4 attacks, and I think I hit once. I don't wound. So I couldn't even get the chance to kill him. But he's got a lot of combat res against him. So he breaks from combat. He runs 5 inches, and I run 4 inches. Or it was something even smaller than that. He runs 4 inches, I run 3 inches. Something just so small. And I'm stuck right there. And I was looking at it too, because I was debating whether or not I wanted to just pivot to look at that chariot, or if I wanted to go after it. And I think I needed a 7 to get out of the chariot's charge arc. And I'm thinking that's average. I'm if I'm in the face of those Temple Militants, I got -1 to wound off. I'm thinking all I got to do is probably stop Perception of Strength. If he gets maybe 1 buff off, it'll be tough, but I think we can slog through it. And I just couldn't do it. So not only did I not get his Dread Prince, not only did I just not kill his Dread Prince with my great weapon, BSB, I couldn't catch him after he broke and rolled super short. and I couldn't get out of the range of this chariot. So very, very bad positioning on his turn 4. I believe he declares a charge of the Temple Militants first, and I decide to flee that. And then he decides to charge the chariot, which I flee again. I honestly was not that far, but my opponent, again, I think failed these crucial charges because I think that could have just really been the game right there, honestly, in a very, very big way. But I got extremely fortunate, I believe, that I got away from all that. So that was really just straight up lucky. And he rallies his Dread Prince, which is, I mean, not surprising. He's just 9 with a reroll. Yeah, so, and this is what we're looking like. Yeah, so the Assassin and the Dread Legionnaires in the West charge the Bombardiers. I get a very good stand and shoot and kill, I think, another 6 out of the 8. So there's only 2 guys left, so I'm hoping I can just maybe kill the unit. And if I break, I break. But if I can get the unit, that will be just very good in itself so that he's only got 1 scoring on that side of the board. So he gets Flex Card 5, which is a little tough because it gives him a lot of dice. He gets Truth and Time off, which is, he got it off no problem with his Warlock Outcast, and I just had to let that go. That might help him get out of some charges, which would be very bad for me. But then I'm able to stop everything else in the magic phase. So we go to this combat, and I want to say did 3 wounds overall to his, between like stomps and between hits on his unit, and I think he just rolled a couple 6-up armor saves to keep that one guy alive. So that was a little frustrating. But this is sort of actually fast forwarding a bit. He overruns and he goes a really tiny amount. He rolls like 4 dice, and he only ends up limping forward like 5 inches or something like that. In which he stayed in the charge arc of the Tuskers, who decide to charge them. They flee. They get caught by the Tuskers, and then the Tuskers fail their roll, their discipline check to turn, which I was not happy about because then they could have zoned those other Legionnaires, maybe picked up some more points, but nope, they're just looking off to the west right now. But my BSB's unit does rally, which I was grateful for, and my shaman unit starts moving back towards the center. I get Flux Card 4, and starting to actually get some better dice here. I get Break the Spirit off on the Temple Militants, and then I get Children of Umi and Awaken the Beast for Resilience on the Tribes and BSB block. The nothing can actually see the Shaman's unit, so I didn't have to buff them this turn. So that was nice. I figured with those 2 buffs, that's really tough for my opponent to really put any wounds now on the Tribesmen with all that. So I thought that was quite good. So, and my opponent must have too, because he decides just to move the Warlock out of the unit. This is his turn 5, and he shafts my BSB's unit with the Corsairs. He also chaffs the Tribesman block with my Shaman with his Dread Prince. And he starts moving up his Legionnaires to try and score on turn 6, and he moves up his chariot to threaten the Tuskers, everything that I got in the west. Moves his bolt throwers over to work on those Tuskers, and yep. So in Magic, he's scrying up on his Prince. Not really that worried about that. Not gonna fight that guy. Going into Ogre Con's turn 6, I really just turn the Tuskers around and move them over a little bit to give myself the best position. If I flee, I might stay on the board. I'm able to. I mean, I had those Yetis, so I just chaff the Dread Legionnaires so that they can't overrun and get on the hill. And then, which actually also helps chaff the Chariot, so I don't have to worry about that charging my Tuskers. And yeah, after that, yeah, and my BSB's unit goes in the Corsairs. I'm hoping if I can get a juicy overrun, I can get on that water train feature and then have the objective, because I think at this point there's no, right now it's contested because nobody's scoring on it. But if I can get my Tribesman on there, I can force my opponent to have to think about fighting them in combat. I just move up. I move back with my Shaman's unit. I didn't even want to try and get the raptor. I think he had one wound. My opponent was able to take a wound off during that magic phase where he had the 5 magic. So this is going into my magic phase, or this is going into combat. In magic, I got Children Umi off in this block. I tried to get a Totemic Summon up to try and kill his Warlock Outcast, but he stopped that. Very wise, because that would have been a nice breath weapon. And oh my gosh, guys, folks, we kill the Corsairs to a man, no problem. They don't do anything back to us. We needed 5 inches to get into this water train feature, and we roll a 4 again. Like, come on. We did get break because we also got break the spirit up on his Temple Militants. So I'm thinking like, man, if those Temple Militants were going into me, like they're hitting me on 4s, they're wounding me on 5s if they don't get a buff off. Like that is a decent fight actually. Like I think I will do as much as he does, and that's pretty juicy. But man, it wasn't meant to be. I'm literally like a bee's dick away from that train feature. It's so sad. Ugh. So on my opponent's turn 6, he decides to put the Dread Prince in here because again he's only got 1 wound and he's thinking, he could pretty much tank this whole unit and he can just issue a duel. So that's what he does, and he puts some shooting over here, and thankfully I pass my panic check, so I don't lose this very expensive Tusker unit. He charged here with his Raptor Chariot, and I believe I do 1 wound to him with the champion. He does 4 wounds to the unit, and I stick actually, so that was fun. And then going to this last combat here, I just sacked the champion for the Dread Prince. The champion actually had 2 wounds on him, so he only had a wound left. And I passed my steadfast check. And that's the end of the game, folks. So this game ends up being a 10-10 tie. No objective winner. My opponent couldn't get on that hill. I couldn't get in the water train feature. And I think I was up 100 or so points, like 125 maybe, which is, not enough to break into that next category. But yeah, just super close game. I think some really swingy bad rolls for both of us. Like my opponent failing some of those critical like charges where if he made them, it would have been game changing. Me failing a couple overruns and pursue rolls. But yeah, overall, really fun game. Really different feel playing against Dread Elves. I feel like I haven't actually played against Dread Elves in quite a bit before this game. Which, I think there's probably a reason why that was a thing. But yeah, definitely a very fun game. Great opponent. You can't really fault the 10-10 result. That's actually probably the most enjoyable result. I was happy with the way this Ogre army played. Definitely want to give him a try. I'm going to definitely check out this army again after the points update. Everybody, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you soon with another 9th Age Battle Report.